A bad decision is like throwing a stone into a pond. You can never fully undo the ripples it creates. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is the land of the midnight gazettes. How can you put an end to corruption in our island nation? Joining us this evening on the show are Manjula Gajanayaka, Executive Director, Institute for Democratic Reforms and Electoral Studies, Attorney at Law Lasantika Hettiarachchi, Advocacy and Research Manager, Transparency International Sri Lanka, Attorney at Law Asela Kalugampitiya, Director, Centre for Evaluation, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, as well as Attorney at Law J.M. Vijay Bandara. Joining us this evening on the show to pose questions on to my immediate left is Niresh Lethami, Consultant English News Director at Newsfirst. As always, you too can join in as far as the conversation is concerned. The number to WhatsApp your messages is 076 656 5353. The number once again, 076 656 5353. We'd love to take those questions to the panelists as the show goes along. So let's start off with Manjula Gajanayaka, Executive Director, Institute for Democratic Reforms and Electoral Studies, on our topic tonight, how to put an end to corruption in the land where there is always reversals in terms of gazettes. Your time starts now.
Yeah, actually now we are telling that Sri Lanka is a bankrupted country. It is a fact now. But when we are searching the secret, the behind reasons for that, actually there are, we can observe, we can highlight several issues. The one of things actually that what you mentioned, that the sudden decision made by maybe executive president as well as ministers, that is the reason. Then at the moment actually we do have 21 cabinet ministers, 38 state ministers, while the president is having 3 or 4 portfolios. Then, considering these facts actually where we are now, the thing is actually that we are gradually strengthening the executive presidency while we are undermining the parliamentary democracy. This is the main reason. I would like to highlight one of decision made by, a verdict actually made by Justice Mark Fernando earlier. In the case of Manil Fernando and another D.M. Jayarathne, Minister of Agriculture and Lands, at that time actually Justice Mark Fernando highlight the minister cannot order the issue of a section 2, we can forget it that, to notice unless he has a public purpose in mind. That is the most important word, public purpose in mind. But we can't see that the most of decision taken by even president, maybe ministers, actually, we can't see the specific word made by, highlighted by Justice Mark Fernando, public purpose in mind. That is the major problem prevailing at the moment.
Manjula, I can recollect when you were here last time, we were discussing about an election. That was the time that we were talking about a local government election, and you were very skeptic that elections won't be held. However, today, Ranil Wickremesinghe announced in Parliament next year would be an election year, and there would be national elections, which is the general election, as well as a presidential election. Is this news to you? Does this sound like music to your ears, or what are your thoughts now on
Not at all, actually. Still, let me to prevail that the skeptic, I mean the pessimistic mind, because I don't think that the main thing is, according to our constitutional legal background, I don't think that president should be highlighted that we are going to hold the elections. But when he highlighting that fact, we shouldn't forget that the main thing, because we already behind the election calendar, and we almost, I mean, there were 2 elections have disappeared almost, provincial council and local government. But I would like to say that still they are trying to postpone the election, because that's why they have appointed the presidential commission to oversee the matters of electoral reforms. I mean, they have given a time frame mandate but still they are trying. As you very well aware, actually they have used 32 tactics to postpone the election. Maybe the appointing the presidential election may be the 33rd tactic that used by our president. Then I mean it is not a new news, and also they are trying to postpone the election as much as possible.
So you're trying to say that those who are waiting to change government next year, they will have to wait longer now?
Maybe it is not a surprise under this presidency, because actually they are trying hard to do that. Then if they can use the, I mean, I don't say that, I mean, they can use the judiciary, but I mean, actually they will use maximum what they can. That is the main reason.
Right. Thank you very much, Manjula Kajanayaka, Executive Director for the Institute for Democratic Reforms and Electoral Studies. I've now moved my attention towards Attorney at Law Lasantika Hettiarachchi, Advocacy and Research Manager, Transparency International, Sri Lanka.
Yes, I will actually start with what you said, bad decisions, right? The gazettes and the bad decisions. So what happens when these bad decisions are taken is, it's in a way is breaching the public trust that is imposed on public officers, because they are not supposed to be taking bad decisions. They're not put there to take bad decisions. They're supposed to take decisions in the public interest, like Manjula mentioned. So when the persons that are put there by the people to take decisions on behalf of people, when those decisions are bad decisions, what we are seeing is it's one of the most prominent forms of corruption now, which is abuse of power. Because for you to deliberately keep churning out gazettes, and if they turn out to be bad decisions which has an impact on the economy or the fiscal economy or the people, you're abusing and misusing the power that is entrusted upon you. So what we are seeing is it's just one form of corruption that is prevailing in the country right now in the form of bad decisions, which are actually abuse of powers and the misuse of powers. So if I may to jump in right away, now you asked what do we do about bad decisions? How do we stop bad decisions? I think we already have the mechanisms that are put down in writing. Two examples. One is the IMF very recently conducted a governance assessment. Then they published a technical report on this governance assessment. And in that assessment, one of their priority recommendations is actually to amend tax legislation to eliminate or restrict ministerial authority to introduce tax changes without prior parliamentary approval, to ensure that such changes do not generate revenue losses. So this is one way that even the IMF in their assessment of governance has identified, like you said, the bad decisions are being made and the powers, excessive powers have been given to certain ministers to take decisions, to take arbitrary decisions as they will, which is not necessarily in the interest of the public. So even the IMF in their report has recommended that this needs to be put a stop to. I think that's one place that you can start.
Right. Lasantika, I recollect a few years ago when Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the president of the country, and there were many gazettes that were reversed overnight, back to back. He became a laughing stock in front of the country as well as experts and also civil society. Why is Ranil Wickremesinghe so different? We just saw how the reversal on the import tax on sugar was reversed a couple of days ago. Why is he so different? Is he another Gotabaya Rajapaksa in power?
I don't think I can answer that question in the sense that whether he is another Gotabaya Rajapaksa or not. The thing is, there are different ways of doing the same thing essentially. So if you are, what we are seeing is that decisions are being made, maybe not as many gazettes, maybe not as many decisions, but what we are seeing is the decisions that are being made are similar in the sense that they are not being made in the interest of the public. They are not good decisions that are being made to serve the public.
So,
that's what
so
we
are you
are
trying
seeing.
to say that the reversal that we saw recently, the latest reversal on the sugar, did it tantamount to corruption? Is that why they took that decision?
Well, whether a reversal or a gazette, right, whether it tantamounts to corruption depends on the intent behind that, the motive behind the decision, and how that decision have been arrived to. So if the decisions are not being arrived at in a way that it is supposed to, for example, following the due process. If the due process has not been followed and decisions are being taken arbitrarily at the will of one person, then, you know, that's bad in law in the first place.
Right. Thank you very much, Lasantika Hettiarachchi. I now move my attention towards Attorney at Law Asela Kalugampitiya, Director, Center for Evaluation, University of Sri Javardhanpura.
Thank you very much. I think now we are in this table citizens of a bankrupt country, right? And Sri Lanka is a failed state. Why? We have, of course, high corruption, accountability issues, waste of resources in the country, fraud, high level, fraud and bad governance, transparency issues. But the issue is that ministers, the government, politicians who govern this country, they do what they want, right? They take the decisions they want. Now, if you take this decision about taxes for sugar, right? Previously, 16 billion loss for the country, but it is a benefit for few people or one company or few companies, right? And when you reverse it, right, you impose the tax again, billions of profit for one company or few companies, loss for the country. So both ways, it is a loss for the country. Now, IMF, the same report Lasantika mentioned, so the most important recommendation out of 16 recommendations they mentioned in there is that ministers should not be able to change taxes without prior approval from the parliament. So parliament is the custodian of, in this country, finance. But why decisions are taken like this, right? And main issues of financial management according to this report in Sri Lanka, exceeding the expenses of the budget allocation without any approval. That is one main reason, one of the main reasons. And inability to collect the income due to the government. Why it is happening? The reason is that officers and politicians, they waive the taxes or any income should come to the government for different reasons, right? And sometimes, you know, it goes as a bribe. And somebody gets the income, somebody gets money, but not the government. So in this country, government loses the income. It goes down and the corruption goes up. Now, IMF says spending over the allocated budget leads to corruption in this report. Of course, it can be, because now according to the corruption index, Sri Lanka was 107th in 2022. 2021, we were at 102nd place. 2020, we were at 94th place. So within 3 years' time, 94th, we went down to 102nd and then 107th. So corruption increase, and this is out of 180 countries, right? And 2022, Bhutan is at 25th place, a South Asian country, very small country in South Asia, and Maldives 87th place, right? So this is very clear how the corruption has improved in this country and decreased, the income decrease in this country and increased the corruption.
Asela, you spoke about how Sri Lanka is a bankrupt nation. This was similar sentiments expressed by Manjul in his opening remarks as well. Isn't it shameful to do it for the second time, a reversal of an import tax such as sugar?
Exactly. It's shameful, and it questions our systems. It questions the decision-making process in this country. Who can take decisions? Who is responsible? Who is accountable to the government, accountable to the parliament, accountable to the citizens? I don't see anybody is responsible or accountable to the citizens of this country. And when we say we are a bankrupt country, is this the way the decision makers, the government behave, the parliament and the parliament behave, and to come out of this situation and improve the country situation, improve the economy of this country? This is the way we should do that? No.
Right.
And corruption goes up when we, of course, we are a bankrupt country and corruption goes up. And decisions are taken like this. Now, when we had this issue about eggs, right? So the minister decides to import eggs immediately. And 11,000 egg producers closed down their businesses in the country. What should the minister do? Actually, minister should support them. Now they have issues about feeding the food for animals and those things. So the minister should resolve those issues rather than immediately taking the decision to import eggs. And this is, of course, this decision, is definitely a loss for the country because some people make big profits out of this, right?
Thank you very much, Marcelo, for your thoughts in the first round. We, of course, will delve deeper into these issues as the show goes along. I now move my attention towards Attorney at Law, James Vijay Bandara. What are your thoughts on our topic tonight?
Yeah, now, if I commence with referring to the recent Supreme Court 5-bench judgment about the responsibility for the economic collapse and economic maladministration. From 20th Amendment onward, when I come to this table, I've been insisting one fact, that is, there are two avenues in the arena of laws. One is the law that governs the subjects. The other area of law is law that governs the rulers, the organs of government. What we are mainly lacking is the rulers are not governed by the existing system of law. Therefore, there is a total collapse of the government system. So we can sit here and propose, come up with so many suggestions. Those will be useful only if there is a proper system of governance in terms of the constitution. Those back letter laws are there, constitution also there. But if you take last 2-3 years, this system has not been obeyed from most senior top-level officers attached to the three organs of government. If I quote from Supreme Court in this recent judgment, it says in one place, in this regard, it is pertinent to note that at all times relevant to this application, that is economic collapse, the central bank was placed as an institution coming within the purview of Minister of Finance. At no stage the fortitude of the finance minister was held by the president. But in fact, the president had been intimidating every time with the affairs of the central bank when he was not the Minister of Finance. And all the officials had kept silent over that. Nobody has come up and said, no, you can't do it. That is the minor level. Now, after Aragale, this election of this president and having a mixed opposition and mixed government cabinet, that has created more worse situation in the country, because there is no proper system, no proper order from president to ministers of cabinet, then the secretaries, and then junior ministers and chairmen of institutions like now cricket. The cricket board chairman says something, minister says something, parliament says something else. And the speaker sometimes say if parliament resolves something, it becomes the law, whereas constitution doesn't say that. Parliament can express its view only through an act of parliament, signed by the president or if after signed by the speaker. But the speaker himself say if we pass a particular resolution by simple majority, it becomes the law. Supreme Court has no authority. And if you just look at how parliamentarian acting, I mean, they openly criticize violating the parliamentary procedures and traditions and conventions, judiciary. We don't know which part is correct. But they have gone to the extent that like small kids in a preschool, they're quarreling each other. These three perhaps executive and legislature are fighting against each other. They are blaming judiciary. The judiciary cannot, there is no forum for the judiciary to answer. So we have gone to a level, a total lack of discipline in governance. Forget about what people do on the street or roads or pedestrian crossing, the normal criminal law violation or family divorce. So those are not matters. What matters is whether we have placed a system by the constitution, whether that system is being adopted or adhered to by the three organs of government.
But today even President Ranil Wickremesinghe said in Parliament that making detrimental remarks over court decisions is not in the best interest of the judiciary in the country.
Yes, he himself did so many times. He himself did it so many times. At Nuwara, at some other things, he said that in front of judges, he said that you all can't resolve, I am the one. So then, while cases were pending, I mean, that's the level of lack of discipline.
So getting back into this sugar scam that took place recently, Mr. Vijay Bhandari, if you look at it, I recollect on the 17th of April 2022, last year, the National Audit conducted a special audit, and they determined that reduction of the taxes from 50 rupees to 25 cents incurred Sri Lanka a loss of 16 billion rupees. Now, this is the second time that this is happening, where it's a reversal from 25 cents, it was increased to 50 rupees, and we saw those prices were slapped on the existing sugar in the market as well. When are we going to recover this money? This is not small money that we're talking about. This is not pocket money that we're talking about. This is big money.
Public money.
Public money. How are we going to recover this?
Until such time that we place the governance system in place, nothing will happen.
Right. Thank you very much.
That's my simple answer.
Thank you very much, Attorney at Law James Vijay Bhandari. As I said before, to my immediate left today is Niresh Thambi, Consultant English News Director at News First. Missing last week, Niresh, and back this week.
Yes,
Took a break.
Yes, well, I thought I'd give you a break.
So the ball is in your court, literally.
Thank you, Shameen. So let me ask my first question from Lasantika. Accountability, transparency, responsibility, all these phrases, these words, they are in fact concepts, very noble concepts. But are these concepts completely incompatible with our practice of midnight gazettes?
Well, the simple answer is yes, it is incompatible. It's it's in complete contradiction of transparency, especially accountability and responsibility, right? Because just to look at the impact of these midnight gazettes, so what does it say when it's a gazette that has been arbitrarily published, a midnight gazette, where there is no process that was followed, or we don't know whether there is a due process that has been followed. So the impact is that there is lack of accountability, like you said, because there are decisions being made, a lot of decisions are being made, but like he mentioned, there is no accountability when it comes to the impact of those decisions later. There is no accountability. There is no person who's coming and saying, yeah, I published this gazette, this was my decision, and I'm accountable for this. So we only see decisions, we only see gazettes, we don't see any accountability, and we don't see anyone taking responsibility for this ad hoc or arbitrary decision making. So lack of accountability is one, and then of course transparency. Now, people are not privy to the information on which these decisions were based on. We don't know what the justifications that were used, what data that were looked at, what expert advice, whether expert advice have been sorted, whether was the risk assessed before taking these decisions. I think that's why we see a lot of examples where these decisions completely very directly impacted the economy itself and the fiscal governance of the country. So there is no transparency. And when I'm talking about transparency, it's not only gazettes, right? If we take cabinet decisions, they're not all published. We are not all privy to all the cabinet decisions that are being taken in the country, especially related to fiscal decisions. So we are only privy to what they decide that people should see. So there are a lot of decisions that have been taken behind the doors, so to speak.
Well, Lasantika, you said that people are not aware as to who reverse gazettes or who puts out gazettes. Just now you just mentioned. But it's quite clear who does it. We know it's a government department of printing that prints the gazette, yes. But they are not the authority that is responsible. There has to be someone responsible, and we know who that is.
What I actually mentioned is that people are not aware about how these decisions were arrived at. Before you take a decision, what were the justifications, what were the reasons, and what was the intent, what was the need to take that decision, what were the data that was used, what expert advice was sought, who were the stakeholders that were consulted. Before taking these massive decisions that impacts the whole economy, what did you do to arrive at that decision? Whose decision was it to take this decision actually? That is what people don't know.
But don't you think the government in power is vested with that responsibility?
Of course, that's what I'm saying. There are signatures, there are names behind the decisions and the gazettes when they are being made. That's exactly what I mentioned. But when the decisions are bad, when there's an impact on the decisions, there is no one taking accountability.
Because at the end of the day, Lashika, the buck has to stop somewhere. Yes. And the buck has to stop with President Ranil Wickremesinghe. There is no, because the president directly overlooks the Department of Government Printing as well.
Yes, but I think it's, of course, the president has
there have been instances in Sri Lanka where the government, the area of the Department of Government Printing has been even like a high security zone.
Yes,
yes.
That was the one controlled to postpone the election.
Postpone the elections also. We've seen this, and henceforth, the president is responsible, and he cannot deviate from that responsibility at any cost.
Yes, it's not only the president. None of the public officers can deviate from the responsibility that is given to them, because they are to represent the public. Whatever the decisions you take, it has to be made in the interest of the public. So if it's not made in the interest of the public, then your decisions, you have to be accountable to your decisions, and people should be able to question these decisions and hold you and ask you to be accountable, whether it's president or different public officer.
So Manjula, you quoted Justice Mark Fernando, that such decisions should have a public purpose in mind. But it almost seems that some of these decisions by ministers, their purpose is in fact to rob the public.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, what I can say related to that, since I am an election monitor, election observer, you know that especially in this sugar scam, I'm pretty sure that they are pumping money for election campaigns. That is the main reason to do that, because we do have a campaign finance law, but we don't have political finance law. Then that means actually we can't track or monitor campaign finance or political finance 365 days. But we can track money during only election campaign period only. That's why actually, because that especially sports administrators, that sugar importers, maybe they will come up with pumping money during election campaign period. The main thing is actually what I always thinking that Mr. Vijay Bandara actually talking on that judiciary and what parliamentarian fired them. I mean, talking about them. But let me to say one thing about that. You may remember that since we are talking on we are a bankrupted country and many things. But there were very few persons, officials behind that, especially like President Secretary P.B. Jayasundara and other persons. You may remember correctly, you may well remember that one Supreme Court panel of judges, maybe 5 bench or 7 bench, actually full bench, once they determined that he is not eligible to do any post in the government. But what has happened finally? But next panel actually, that one soon after, President Mahinda Rajapaksa became in power, another panel of judges actually decided that he can do anything. No, after that, submitting the affidavit, actually, he's eligible for to do that job. Then we have to think twice about that also. Another thing is that actually when you are asking the ministerial thing that, I mean, I can, as political science students, actually, we always talking on Montesquieu's theory that separation of power, many things. But the instance is here actually that President always using Board of Ministers to undermine the legitimacy and powers of the Parliament. That is the main thing, main reason here. As an example, actually, that you know that earlier we know that MDA Jayawardena, once Ronnie the Male, even Cyril Matthew, we can't accept what he did at that time, 1983. But almost all the time, late President Jayawardena removed them, because of actually he can use them, because you know that what was his art of govern. But what is the cabinet? Cabinet mean always from early 80s, okay, that according to the Westminster system, we always highlighting that the collective responsible of the cabinet. That means you can talk anything within the cabinet, but you can't against that. But contrary to that, we saw what has happened in Yugadanavi agreement. At that time, minister, not the line minister actually, at that time actually Uday Gammanpila was there as the minister, but only the president's secretary, president and another powerful minister were aware on that. That means even right now, they are not talking deeply in the cabinet, or even outside actually they are not talking.
You're talking about the cabinet. We've had presidents in Sri Lanka who went on to say that they saw the cabinet decisions that were passed in the cabinet the next morning in the newspapers.
Definitely.
That's the sort of country that we were in.
Yeah, that's the reason of collapse.
So let me ask Asaila now, the 16 requirements of the IMF in the diagnostic report. At this rate, Asaila, do you think any of these would get implemented?
Very interesting.
And all 16 deal with corruption in some form or the other.
Yeah, now very interesting question and important thing now. 16 recommendations. The main issue is whether we have to wait for IMF to give us these 16 recommendations. This is our country. This is Sri Lanka, right? So whether we should improve our country or whether we want IMF to come and give us recommendations to change the system or improve the system. So that is the fundamental question I have.
Yes, but this diagnostic report was done at the request of the government of Sri Lanka, of the IMF.
Yeah, why we are asking IMF to give these recommendations. Now, these 16 recommendations, 8 should be implemented by Ministry of Finance, right? 50% of the recommendations should be implemented by Ministry of Finance, 2 by Ministry of Justice and other institutions, 1 each. Now, these 8, it shows that how corrupted, how bad is our finance system in the country. If the 50% of the recommendations from IMF report should be implemented by the Ministry of Finance, it says there are a lot to change within the Ministry of Finance. Now, have we seen any decision, now even we are talking about this recent decision, have we seen any decision even after this report, you know, with the improved situation? No. Any improved decision? We haven't seen any, right? And now Manjula mentioned about, you know, this should be the judgment and, you know, it should be for the interest of the country, right? Now, these 2 decisions definitely came with interest of the country. First decision about sugar scam, they said, we want to give some kind of concession to the consumers, the citizens. So that's why we are deducting the tax, 50 rupees to 25 cents. The issue is, so there was, you know, agenda behind that, right? Although the main reason was that, agenda behind that.
What's the agenda, Marcelo?
I think you know that.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
That's
I'm
why
oblivion to that.
there was an agenda. That's why
What's the agenda?
only
What's
one
the
person, no few companies get the profit, 16 billion from the first decision, right?
First scam.
First scam, yes, 16 billion. If there was no agenda, can somebody only, you know, we have 22 million in this country.
But my question is, Asela, why aren't we taking enough steps to recover this 16 billion? Why aren't we doing it? You say that we are a bankrupt nation. Mandura says we are a bankrupt nation. We all know it's a bankrupt nation effective last year. Why aren't we taking enough efforts to recover this money? Isn't that the need of the hour?
So what is the mechanism?
Exactly.
The mechanism, I'll tell you now, I'll tell you a classic example. When we look at the IMF diagnostic report, it says the objective, right? The objective goes on to say strengthen accountability and rule of law. Then it goes on to state enhance transparency in fiscal governance, strengthen transparency, enhance accountability, reduce conflict of interest, enhance the rule of law. These are the objectives that has to be met. This is not rocket science. We don't need the IMF to tell us this.
Yeah.
We have to figure it out ourselves as a nation. Don't you think so, Sailor?
Exactly. Now that's my question as well. I said, you know, whether we need IMF to tell us all this, good governance in this country, transparency in this country, accountability in this country, accountability to whom, and who should be accountable, right? Why we need IMF and why the government asked IMF to give this report, right? Yes, so definitely there was, you know, agenda behind that. That's why, you know, only few people, instead of 220 million in the country, everyone should get, you know, the benefit out of this decision. Only few people get the decision, benefit, right? And now this type of scams, very easy, because now if you see some scams, like, you know, people do, take small amount from people, but they tackle many people, like 10,000 people, 100 rupees each. Then if you lose 100 rupees, nobody cares. Of course, you think, okay, I lost 100 rupees, but you are not going to take legal action.
We've had parliamentarians also collecting 100 rupees.
Yeah.
From the public.
Exactly.
At one point.
Yeah.
Now this is also similar to that, because each citizen or each family just pay 50 rupees and are okay, 50 rupees, we are okay. I see that, you know, this is kind of a similar scam, right? And now second decision also, sugar scam, okay, this is for the public interest. Now business people get the profit, not the public. Benefit doesn't go to the public. So we change the decision and we impose the tax and impose tax. And so again they got the benefit, right?
No, but the problem,
because whatever the stocks they had, they have already cleared.
Yeah, no, the point is, Attorney at Law, Mr. Vijay Bandara, the point is, right now there is these TIN numbers that need to be opened. The tax ID number that has to be opened at the Inland Revenue Department. I am trying to figure out, is the government or the Inland Revenue Department going behind the big fish? We see president's sons buying houses amounting to 600, 700 million rupees. We see politicians purchasing houses amounting to 100, 150 million rupees. So my question is the Inland Revenue Department really honest in their approach to nab those who are really corrupt, the big fish in this massive ocean?
You are touching only a small area of the big problem. So you are asking, why aren't we take a decision? Why aren't we those laws are being implemented? Implemented by whom? I mean, you cannot talk. How you always ask from year 2020, when we come to 20th Amendment, the entire country, when you and me were against the dual citizen coming into Parliament, right? Then that law was passed. All the advisors, as she was explaining, hide behind the door. Law passed. Within a year, it was removed. Now Supreme Court says that Minister of Finance, who had not been elected by the people, Merely because the 20th Amendment, he went to Parliament and became the Minister of Finance. Now Supreme Court said he has destroyed the economy. Where is the accountability? As she said, who has advised? Are they coming forward? No. And I have to answer very clearly your problem. We are crying. Why aren't those laws are being implemented? Now, 15th of September, we talked that this anti-corruption law came into operation. Speaker has signed. Now it is in the drawer. Nothing happened. If you look at the Parliament and the cricket scenario, so most of the parliamentarians talk about corruption. I mean, those are the people who know the law, who passed the law. Why can't they implement the anti-corruption law against this? But they just talk and go home. After having their tea and food stuff from Parliament, they go home.
So you are saying everyone in Parliament is wrong?
Yes, no point of talking solution without setting up the mechanism. That is the most pertinent matter at this juncture for the country. No point of talking piecemeal policies or the Inland Revenue or the police department. That will not resolve problem. The entire system collapsed, governance system collapsed. Set up the government system first.
So what
election is a must.
An election.
Election is a must.
You're calling for an election.
Yes. No other solution at all. Because you know that democracy means the ruler should have the majority power. Then most of these problems wouldn't have been arising.
So are you trying to say, Mr. Vijayabandar, even the NPP members are at fault? Because they say, no, birds of the same feather
we all
flock
are
together.
at fault to a certain extent. But when it's come to Parliament, NPP 3 people can do very little, right? They have been doing that. We all are at fault, all citizens and all who have voted for either party, you can say. But then what is the legitimate means for us to ensure that there is a proper system of government? That is only through casting our vote and electing the new government. So then most of these problems, now President go to Parliament.
No, but today should have been music to our ears because President said that there will be 2 elections next year.
I don't trust at all his words.
Why?
If he's saying mean, he has some other agenda in his mind.
No, you're saying agenda, you're saying agenda. What is this agenda? Mr. Vijayabandar, don't worry. Today when you go home, you can go home without a problem. No one is going to.
What is apparent
is
take
you in.
What is apparent is he is not going to contest an election and he will never ever be winning an election. So he doesn't want to face for the election. And also this government, parliamentarian, doesn't want Parliament to be dissolved. They want to remain till the maximum 5 years.
No, yeah, so Mr. Vijayabandar, my point is this, right? My point is, when you buy a house with your hard-earned money, the Inland Revenue Department comes behind you, asking you how did you get that money, right? Then you get letters to your house saying that they want to revalue your houses based on the taxes that have been implemented. Does this same theory apply for the politicians?
It should.
Now it should, but is it applying? That's the question mark.
Not at all.
Now let's say we've all heard one of the parliamentarians started off his political career with a communication.
Yeah.
Today that parliamentarian has a house which is worth millions.
Yes.
How did he amass so much of wealth? Who is responsible? Who? Isn't it the role of the Inland Revenue Department to carry out the task at hand properly and transparently? Are they doing that job?
If those responsible officers are independent, it's a mere an assumption, right? What you say would have been correct, but they all are, as it reflects from this judgment also. All the officials are under obligation to these ministers or family who run the government. So don't expect, especially this existing system, to resolve any of these problems. They will do some of the condition to please IMF, but not to get the country out of this trouble. Nothing will happen. Even tomorrow, I mean, if we cannot appoint an IGP, how can we maintain peace and order? How much of time we can waste over here talking why that law is not being implemented? Useless. We can talk. Nothing will happen. I mean, to whom you talk? To whom you want to convince?
So
There's no institution.
Manjula, my point is, we've gone through a lot as a nation. Last year was the pinnacle of it. We ousted a government, a new president came into power. The way in which he came into power is under contention by a lot of civil rights organizations, but let's park that aside because that was through a democratic process at the end of the day. Isn't it shameful that we are discussing about corruption when the people demanded for a systemic change last year. And we are beginning to be on that square once again, back to square one.
Yeah, I think actually, according to my observation, the first thing is actually still we are maintaining the executive presidency. That is my viewpoint, because you know that Mr. Vijay Bandara correctly said that the mere point, I mean, he's expecting that at least to reduce corruption, that the government, if government officers are working efficiently, that we will be able to do, I mean, at least to the low down that. But the thing is actually, Shamir, the thing is, let's say that after that demonstration and everything, now we are asking elections, we are moving to election next, maybe 2 national presidential and parliamentary election. Even we are going to have an elections, I don't think that this vicious vicious circle will be changed. The thing is actually, without laid down a proper mechanism, even meaningless having elections, because we are doing the same thing. That's the main thing. Another thing is actually that, yes, it is how hundreds of thousands of people were gathering at the Goldface Green and asking the system change. But the thing is that still they have forgotten everything.
No, but that effort that took place last year seems to be a waste. It it has not changed anything in Sri Lanka.
The reason is actually, at that time, at least if we had the elections at that time, you know that there was a huge demand for transparency and accountable governance. Actually, we can do something. But you know that there's a vicious circle. People also adapt into that because they have forgotten everything now. The thing is actually, there should be a culture, naming and shaming. You ask always the pertinent question, Shamir, that there should be a mechanism. I mean, additionally to
Panjula, what is this naming and shaming in 1993 when President Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga came into power? What did she say?
But after that, people
what
forgotten
happened?
that, no?
What happened? Tell me. She said that she will bring everyone to Goldface and name and shame those who were responsible. Did that happen?
Yeah.
Tell me,
No,
Panjula.
actually,
But even when you name them, they don't seem to have any shame.
No, it is true, but it may be not 100 people or 1,000 people.
But at least this recent court order really sets a good precedent in the Sri Lankan judiciary, because at the end of the day, a decision was taken and there was naming and shaming. Now it is up to the politicians to take the next step forward, whether to revoke the civic rights of these individuals or not. That is up to the parliament.
Yeah, it is true. We don't have a
But
mechanism
do you
to
think
take.
that will happen?
No, I mean, the thing is that actually,
Because
you know
whatever
that.
is happening right now is, you scratch my back, I will scratch your back.
Yeah, it is true. It
Can
is
we
true.
expect from a slavery parliament? I mean, the parliament was totally rejected by the people. Now they're just trying to hanging in power against the will of the people. They are the main enemy of the people. So that's why they got a solo person as a president. Technically, black letter law say it is democratic, but it is unconventional, against the convention. I mean, when you don't have the majority in power, what is the succession president mean? The prime minister can be appointed, because the prime minister means the person who holds the majority command in the parliament. But what happened this time? So that's a rap tactic adopted by those who have been chased out by the people. Those who have been chased out, but they have adopted rap tactic to put the country in a worse situation, and they think always people are their enemy. I don't want to use they are people representative anymore after the Aragale, and the prime minister and president had been removed by the people, voice of the people. Thereafter, you cannot call them as a people representative. They are people's enemies. That's why they adopted this rap tactic, get a single person appointed, and they are mutually coexisting.
But I'm trying to become the devil's advocate, Mr. Jabanlar, because there is no government representative per se. But when you look at last year, right, what you hear from the government officials is the fact that last year we were in queues. We were fighting for gas. For a cylinder of gas, we were fighting for a cylinder of gas. People were dying in queues. But that is not seen now. Do you have problems in pumping fuel? When you go to a fuel station now, you tell them, pump a full tank. Done and dusted. They will do it without any hesitation.
Anybody?
So the people seem to be have forgotten, what the corruption was, what the systemic change that they wanted. Now it's on the back burner. But you're the only one, because the NPP seems to be, you represent the NPP as well, Mr. Vijay Bhandari.
Yeah. I don't hide.
You all are criticizing the government.
Are you
every
happy?
time.
Are you happy that we can...
Don't ask me whether I'm happy.
To
I'm
get
very
your fuel
disgruntled.
done at the world market price? And now are you happy that electricity bill go up day by day?
No, but people are not coming to the streets
you
anymore.
cannot say that people are frustrated, right?
No,
they are
frustrated
waiting
is
to
different.
expect that.
Frustration is different, coming to the streets is different.
No, people may be democratically waiting till the opportunity comes, legitimate expectation.
Now, Mr. Vijay, we keep talking about democracy and we keep talking about the 225 in Parliament and, of course, the presidential election. But that's only a very small part of our country's democracy. What about the local government elections? What about the provincial council elections? Now, today the president spoke about the two big elections, but aren't these other two elections just as important?
They are equally important. They are equally important, and President has violated the fundamental. If you read this judgment and this President's conduct to postpone the election or not to have the election, he is the biggest human right violator in the country. If you read this judgment and compare it with this President's conduct, postponing election, saying that no election was declared in Parliament, he said, and manipulating the government press and not releasing the funds. So if you read...
You're saying, Mr. Vijay Bhandari, through anger, because at that time NPP was gaining some traction.
No. I mean, why should I am a citizen? Maybe I am belong to a political party. I mean, shouldn't every citizen be angry? Shouldn't be them. All should be angry for not affording an opportunity for them to cast their vote. Should it be only NPP? No, UNP or any other party.
So, Lasantika, now, last year you all were also, the Transparency International Sri Lanka body, but you all were also very active. Last year you all were issuing statements, you all were very vocal, but suddenly you all also hiding in seclusion. Very difficult to find you all actively participating in issues of this sort. Why is that?
I am going to very respectfully
disagree,
Shamir. That is not the case.
Tell me, appraise us, make us cognizant as to what is going on.
As far as Transparency International Sri Lanka is concerned, we have not taken a step back in the fight against bribery and corruption. In fact, so the recent court judgment is one of the cases is where we were also petitioner. So I think as a watchdog, as an organization who is doing its best to tackle corruption, to tackle and try and fight against this kleptocracy that we are in, the state capture situation we are in, we have done so far whatever we can in the legally possible all avenues. We always take all avenues, and litigation is one of that. So we have never taken a step back in the fight against corruption. I think now, just like all of them mentioned, it's up to the citizens, it's up to the parliament and the relevant responsible institutions to take it forward.
Yeah,
now,
but what
there
happens?
is a historical judgment that has been given.
I agree, but what happens usually in a democratic framework is, first of all, the media raises its voice, then the civil rights organizations make their point, and that's how the people are given that information as to what they should do as a next step. Henceforth, the civil rights organizations like your organization has a big role to play. I know you all did a petition in terms of the recent judgment as well. I'm not denying that, but I'm saying, but you all have to play that active role, isn't it?
Of course, we are continuing to play the active role. What I'm saying is the citizens and all the other responsible institutions also have to join in. You know, you can't only expect civil society to always do the job. Exactly. So you need, we are talking about a kleptocracy, Shamir. We are, now you asked earlier why these things are not being resolved. Why is there no election? Because we are in a situation of state capture where the country is being governed by a set of people for their benefit, for their gains, right? So it's very easy to under-resource institutions. It's very easy to not go by the rule of law, not follow the due process, change the laws and the policies of the country to benefit you and to create that culture where you're impune, there's impunity to whatever you do. And then there's also fear mongering.
No, but what I don't understand is, Alasantika, you know, let's take what happened on this cricket matter, which is under a lot of discussion now. A government cabinet minister says that the cricket board, which is under his purview, is corrupt. And then you have the Minister of Tourism saying, yes, he knows that it is corrupt, but that has to be solved internally. And then you have the Minister of Energy who's saying that this is a problem. We have a cricket World Cup that's coming up, under-19 cricket World Cup, that is to be hosted in Sri Lanka. So let's get that first to the country. What nonsense is this? You have 3 active ministers punching each other and trying to knock one of them out.
That's
So
what
what can you expect? What can you expect from the parliament? What can you expect from the cabinet? Why aren't they talking and talking about the differences in the cabinet? Why are they doing it in parliament? I just don't understand.
Well, the thing is, Shamir, there is no political will to actually govern, right? There is no political will to govern the country in a democratic manner, in a transparent, accountable manner. So what we are lacking is a political will, because obviously when you're in a kleptocracy, in a state capture, what is absent is that political will that we are looking for. So none of these are going to be resolved when there is no political will, when there is no public interest in mind.
So when you say political will, when you have 122 members in parliament voting in favor of a budget, isn't that political will alone? Can't they do something about it?
The political will has to be for the public interest, right? Not just political will for other interests. So
For their gains. When they want to pass a budget, they do it.
Exactly.
When they want to sideline someone, they do it.
When it benefits you, if there is political will, that is not
because we saw how the
democratic
Public Utilities
will.
Commission chairman was removed.
Exactly.
So when it comes to their women fancy, when someone is stepping the line and not in the line that they want, then they take actions accordingly. I say that this is sad. You know, we come in every week on this show, try to raise the government's eyebrow on what's happening around the country. We saw the manner in which how the Terrorism Act was brought in and then removed, and now being discussed to be brought in again. Now the telecommunication regulatory bill, the cabinet has given their nod. If you ask any cabinet minister, tell me the content of this bill, none of them would be able to say it. None of them. We had a representative from the UNP Working Committee on this show a couple of weeks ago when they initially discussed about bringing forth a broadcast and regulatory bill, Asela. He didn't know the contents. He only knew the objective page. When I asked him to tell me one preamble on the bill, he couldn't. So what can you expect from a cabinet like this?
Yes, I had the same question because I was in the Parliament Gallery on this Monday, from 4 to 6:30 as a visitor, and I saw only 6 members in both sides. This is the budget debate in Sri Lanka, and only this period all the parliamentarians should be in the parliament, attend the budget debate and actively participate. 6 out of 225. And who are these 6 members who were supposed to speak in the they were the speakers at that time. Others are all gone. So this is the main decision making body responsible for finance in this country, and members are not there. Other countries, I know that some countries, let's say Kyrgyz Republic, parliamentarians should be in the parliament from 8 to 5. They have an office. Their assistant is given by the government. They can't take wife or brother-in-law, anyone as the assistant or the coordinator. The
You're
assistant.
talking about the COPE committee. proceedings.
Yeah. So
Sir, you're scared. Don't. I will. I will mention it if you don't want to mention it.
no, I'm not scared. I'm going to mention,
That is Professor Ajit Bandar.
more scary. Yeah, I am going to mention more scary things now. Income statements given only by 12 out of 225 parliamentarians. This is one of the recommendations by IMF. So parliamentarians should provide income statements, but only 12 get, right? Because you ask about why parliamentarians or parliament can't take decisions. Now, I think election monitors say at the end of the election is free and fair, except very few incidents. I never believe that, because in our country, elections are not in the it's not the same ground for everyone. Because the politicians from the government, former ministers at that time, used government resources, everything from the government for the election. So how can it be free and fair, right?
So, Asela, are you sounding a warning that next year's elections, which,
Same thing will happen.
they won't be free and fair?
No, none of the elections. Of course, in my life, and even if I see elections happen before I was born, I don't see any is free and fair, because it should be, fair ground for all the candidates.
But Manjula and them, after election, is always announced the same free and fair.
Free and fair,
Manjula?
except
Partially free but not fair.
right? Except few incidents. That's what they say.
I have never heard Manjula, your organization, saying that when you were working at CMEV also that it was not a free and fair election. I've never heard you all saying that. I'm sorry to say it. Have you all said it? You all have never said it.
Now, regarding local government elections, there were 80,000 candidates. 20,000 candidates have various allegations. 25%. I don't believe this number. I think that should be more than that. 20,000 candidates out of 80,000 local government candidates have various allegations: giving contracts to relatives, misuse of public funds, and low quality of projects. Roads and all completely low quality because of corruption, right? And Shamir, also you asked about whether why can't Inland Revenue Department officers cannot do the needful and collect taxes. IMF report says there are 2,000 officers in Inland Revenue Department and Customs Department. No single action for any officer in last several years, although some of the officers say there is high corruption within these departments. So if the officers are corrupted, how can the government collect taxes due to this is government income? If the government can't collect taxes and it goes to somebody else's pocket, right? You don't collect the whole money, the whole amount, and percentage will go as a bribe to somebody's pocket. This is the situation. So politicians as well as the officers are corrupted. That's why the government doesn't have enough income and take decisions like that.
All right. So I just want to, Asal, so hold you on for a second. I want to, we've got a question from one of our viewers. What cannot be cured has to be endured. Sri Lankans have a high tolerance for corruption. Is there or will there be a way out, Lasantika?
Well, the question is very correct about high tolerance for corruption, Shamir, because inherently we have nurtured this culture of corruption in the country. So with now here we are talking about grand corruption, right? But if you talk about corruption anywhere, people will always say there is big corruption happening. What's the point of looking at these small, little petty corruptions without always going after the grand corruption? So the problem with that is that we have allowed a culture of corruption in the country. We have nurtured this culture for so long, it has become almost normal for people to give a bribe, right? You will hear people say, but you can't get things done without a bribe. But you will also if you really want, you'll find so many people who get things done without ever bribing. It's not that it's impossible. It's just that you have to have that culture within you, the discipline within you to not ever like walk into the corruption or the bribe. So the problem is this culture has already been built. It has been nurtured to an extent where now when grand corruption is happening, when corruption is happening in a large scale, when massive abuse of powers are taking place, people didn't even question it until it became too late. We've tolerated corruption for so long until it individually impacted us. That's when, you know, the Aragale started.
But Lasantika, what is the solution? Is it to keep going after the small fish, which seems to happen from time to time, or is it to go after one or two of the big fish and lock up some of the cabinet ministers or someone like that? What is the example that has to be given in order to set this straight?
In order to set this straight, we have to start from the bottom, because we are living in a culture of corruption. You have to have discipline to not give in to corruption and bribery, and that needs to be instilled in people when they are kids, right? Awareness can do so much, litigation can do so much, civil societies can fight so much, but nothing is going to change. You can't completely eliminate corruption unless you tackle it from where it starts. So you have to, the people have to, public has to change also.
Lasantika, you say the children of this idealization has to be trained about corruption and all that and more.
I'm saying the adults should, when you become an adult, if you're going to continue as an adult who tolerates corruption, who encourages corruption, who never speak against corruption until it affects you personally, then you're also letting that corruption, petty corruption, become grand, and then you're, by the time you start speaking against it, it's already become grand corruption, which is impacting the whole economy, every single person in the country. That is what we are living in now. That is what we are seeing right now, right? So corruption is not something you can tackle by only fighting against one person. It might be a politician. You can't only fight corruption with litigation. You can't only fight corruption by going after politicians, because when in a kleptocracy, for politicians to engage in corruption, there has to be people, there has to be that environment that is allowing this to happen. So it's not only politicians that is always responsible, there's always people, it might be public officers, it might be lawyers.
Now we saw how the Central Environment Authority chairman took a bribe of 10 million and he was released on bail.
Yes, so people are creating this environment which enables corruption. So that also has to be addressed if we are to eliminate corruption.
Yes, but you're asking an entire population to change, which will take a long time. Yes. But my point is, instead, well, perhaps not instead, but it's easier to go after one or two of these cabinet ministers who very blatantly, through these midnight gazettes, simply violate so many laws.
I agree that it's easier, but it doesn't eliminate corruption. That is an action you take against corruption. That's against an offense. Now you're trying to punish the person who did an offense, committed an offense, committed corruption. That doesn't eliminate corruption. That
but
doesn't
that would set the
fix the problem of corruption.
Wouldn't it set the example for the rest of the cabinet?
Given the context we are in, when you're in a kleptocracy, when the politicians know that they have this power that they can misuse, and their actions, they're not being held accountable, they're not being held responsible to their actions, why would that discourage anyone from doing anything?
But that's my point. If say the president decides tomorrow that Minister A and Minister B, who have blatantly committed acts of corruption, need to be arrested, wouldn't that put the brakes on the rest of whoever in the cabinet?
That would certainly be one way to do that. Of course,
and wouldn't that also send the message down through the population?
Yes, it will be a trickle down.
All the government departments and so on.
Yes, that's one way to tackle it for sure. I'm not saying that's not something that shouldn't be done. What I'm saying is to answer your question, to eliminate corruption, to address corruption, that is one way you can address. But to eliminate, that is not the only way.
So yesterday, Niresh, I happened to have met this individual who was a celebrated lawyer in Sri Lanka, now working in Hong Kong. And then he posed a question to me saying, Shamir, why shouldn't we pay taxes? Because we on the show always say that the tax regime, the pay tax regime is quite high for professionals. As such, professionals leave the country. So he tells me, interestingly, he tells me that we have never paid taxes properly in Sri Lanka, pay taxes properly. So henceforth, the government introducing the tax regime to 36% is good enough, because at the end of the day, we have to at least start paying now. My question to him was, Mr. Vijay Bandara, paying taxes is not the problem. Paying the taxes and going into the wrong hands, which facilitates corruption, is the problem in Sri Lanka.
Exactly. I fully agree with you. So again, we are ready even to some increased taxes. I mean, we are ready to pay if the system is placed properly. As your question about the exemplary governance is what is we are lacking right now. So I disagree. I differ from my sister that she says this should start from the bottom. It should first show that you have to build up the trust between the people and also fear of deterrence. That if you do this, this is what is going to happen. When you are having ministers who have been convicted by High Court and still hold the ministry's portfolio and they talk about law, discipline, then people lost trust of the system. So what we have to begin with, establishing the people trust with the system, then from top to bottom we have to go. Certainly, I agree with that. We cannot eliminate by punishing top people. The elimination is the last thing that we have to at least comment something.
Yeah, but what we have to do is there has to be some sort of prosecution.
Yes.
Right? Because at the end of the day, if there is no prosecution, if people are going scot-free to what is happening and under their watch, people will repeatedly do it, isn't it, Manjula?
At the moment, this happens.
They will be encouraged to do it more and more.
Well, take the sugar scam. There was sugar scam 1 and then sugar scam 2. And it was essentially the same scam in reverse.
We can expect another round of sugar scams because national elections actually at least that if they are going to conduct national elections, then that
you're saying there will be another sugar scam?
Yeah, because actually they need money, because those scams actually behind money they are.
But why do I get the feeling, Manjula, that whoever is responsible for this sugar scam is funding politicians with what you're saying right now?
No, it is the tradition of Sri Lanka actually, that you know that since that before 1 year, that before 2021 actually we didn't have any law to prove these, and actually that what we know that is happening. That in the recent times also, that then even though we have a law, campaign finance law, actually I don't think that we will be able to tackle this issue, because the pumping money is imminent, and that it will happen. That's why you always asking that there should be a mechanism. Why we don't have mechanism like that? The thing is actually that they top from the bottom actually, that there's no mechanism because they need money. That's why we are always talking on bond scam, central bank bond scam and other stuff. That is the newest and easiest way to earn money for the election campaigns.
I don't think we'll ever hear the news or sound of Arjuna Mahendra, who was the former governor when the central bank bond controversy took place in 2015. He's definitely not going to come to Sri Lanka anytime soon. Why are you laughing, man? Right.
So Shamir, it's not just a sugar scam. We had the egg scam, we had the flour scam, we had the whole cake being baked and eaten by these politicians.
Right royally. and
right royally, yes.
Right, Roy. Anyway, so I want to wrap up tonight's show, but I want to give each speaker an opportunity to sum up what their thoughts are and the way forward for Sri Lanka. Because at the end of the day, talking about the problems alone won't do. We have to look at solutions and how best we should arrest this problem and move forward. So let's start off with...
Arrest being word. Very important word. Yes.
So let's talk to Attorney at Law, Mr. J. Mujay Bandara, as to what the way forward is and what we should do to overcome this problem and move forward as a nation.
First, we have to agree whether this is impossible or possible. So we have to be still optimistic that this will be at least partly possible and work for that ends. So if we want to have a proper law and order in the country, foremost condition is the proper system of governance. Last 2 years or so in your forums, I have been agitating that we lack this proper form of governance. And we have to have a system of government, Socialist Republic, Democratic Republic of Sri Lanka, that's how we are called. So we must have elections and must get new parliament and new president elected. Thereafter, that point onward, we have to work for system change without waiting till next election comes. Immediately after the election, and people has to ask, as we all talk about the citizen responsibility, they have to be mindful about what are the policies or policy statement. Now, mostly these policy statements going to be the IMF statement in future elections for some of the political parties. And also, if other parties who are opposing that, they also have to explain, including us, what are the alternatives. So we are ready to come up with certain alternatives. This is, I am not saying 100% possible to come out this problem, but I am not saying same time impossible. Still optimistic. Otherwise, most of the young people, even our children, so most are trying to go abroad these days. No hope. That is where we stand right now. So at least we, being adults, we still will believe that this is possible, even partly, and we'll work for that.
Right. Australia Competitor?
Yeah, I think now the institutions, we have to improve the institutions and also strengthen. Now, when it comes to the parliament, now the budget debates are going on. Now, when the parliament approves the budget, then parliament lose the fault on it, right? So last year, 2022-2023, budget proposals without any information about progress is 70%, right? And 2017-2021, it is 45%. We did not take any action when it was 45%. Now it is 70%. This is a research information, right? And so the total budget was 49.33 billion, and this without progress budget proposals account for 47.7 billion, 97%. There is no responsibility. There is no responsible. Nobody can find out who is responsible, which is the responsible ministry or department for this. So this is the situation in the country. Definitely, parliament processes, parliament as an institution should be improved, and it should be accountable not only for passing the budget. As I said, passing the budget, of course, even parliamentarians are not listening to the budget speeches now. So it should be changed. And the executive, what is the decisions taken by the executive, and whether executive can change anything and exceed the budget even without approval from the parliament is a question. Those should be changed. And politicians should be subject to law. They should be equal like any other citizen under the law. So any legal action needed for them should be taken without any hesitation. And regarding elections and who are we electing to the parliament and other institutions, I said elections are not free and fair. So political parties, now political parties nominate candidates, right? And who are the candidates we get from the political parties? That's the main issue. And political parties are not democratic. How can we expect democracy in this country when the political parties are not democratic? Can you see how many parties have leaders for decades and there is no system to change the leadership within the parties, and there is no system for newcomers to come and contest for elections So political parties are not democratic. You can't expect democracy in this country. You can't expect system changes in this country if political parties are like that. First, political parties has to change. Then they have to nominate good quality candidates for people to vote. People get X, Y, Z, all three are corrupted, so you vote one of them. And we get, of course, out of 225, majority corrupted members, or even other institutions, local government. So this system should be changed. So I am not saying we have to wait for an election. Election is hopeless if this continues. So we have to start from the political parties and this system from the nomination process, right? Not in the election. So I think this needs to be fixed. As you said during the discussion, we are discussing every week, not only this program, many programs discuss the same, same way. But what is the progress? So, of course, now we also need to see the results of all these discussions. People come and talk about all this, but where is the message? Where is the outcome? And who gets the message? How can we change? Now we have to have, even media has to have a different strategy to convey this message to make a change. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Asela. Lasantika.
Yes. So we have a governance crisis. What underpins all this corruption, abuse of power, and the economic situation we are in is because of a governance crisis. So how do we address a governance crisis? Like he said, there has to be good governance, and we have to address a governance crisis for us to come out of this corruption landscape we are in. So now, if there is political will, there is already roadmaps given by the civil society and by even the IMF in the current report I mentioned. Their governance assessment report very clearly lays out the roadmap to cure some of these, like to a good extent, to address some of these governance issues we have. And the civil societies with Transparency International Sri Lanka, Verity Research, PAFREL, Sarvodaya, National Peace Council, and the Centre for Policy Alternatives got together and published a civil society governance diagnostic report on Sri Lanka, which also lays out 34 recommendations, all to resolve the governance crisis we are in. So if there is a political will, if there is an actual genuine need to change the corruption culture we are in, to change the governance to good governance, there is already the ways to do it, the recommendations to follow, the implementations that has to take place, put in writing in black and white. So we only need political will to implement this and to do it, to curb corruption and the governance crisis we are in to a good extent. It will not eliminate corruption fully, but that's a start.
Thank you very much, Santika. Manjula.
Yeah, even in this show, actually, we always highlighted that though we have this kind of discussions, there's no result. The result mean actually that's why no elections. Because at least maybe that what I mentioned earlier, that naming and shaming. Shamir, you may differ from that on this point of view. That my idea is that actually that maybe at least 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, they may be aware on these matters. Even in this show, actually once we talked about that the thing is actually they are hesitate to conduct even local government and provincial council election because it is a disadvantage for them. That's why they don't have elections. Due to this, I would like to highlight one thing that which I earlier highlighted actually, that since national elections are closer, we can expect that there may be round of scams because they need money. Therefore, I would like to highlight three things. The first thing is political literacy. We need to improve the political literacy of people, not how to vote. People know how to vote, but how to select people. The second thing is actually that independent commissions actually how to strengthen, and how to act not in by words actually, but in actions. Independent commissions and even constitutional council, how they differ what president is saying actually, they should say publicly what is their stance. But unfortunately, they are not saying that. The lastly, my thing is actually, before even next election, we have to gather to abolish, even not as a mere slogan, we have to gather to abolish the executive presidency. The hidden hand of all these things, the thing is actually the almighty executive presidency, not president maybe, no? Executive presidency. Then we need to abolish the executive president even before the next election. We have to gather. Other than that, we will not be able to have a free country.
Right. Thank you very much, Manjula Gajanayaka, Executive Director, Institute for Democratic Reforms and Electoral Studies. Attorney at Law, Lasantika Hettiarachchi, Advocacy and Research Manager, Transparency International Sri Lanka. Asira Kalugampitiya, Director, Center for Evaluation, University of Sri Jawaharlal, as well as Attorney at Law, J. Mujay Bandara. Thank you very much, gentlemen and the lady, for joining us this evening on Face the Nation. Thank you very much, Niresh, Consultant English News Director at Newsfirst, for joining us this evening on Face the Nation to pose questions from our panelists tonight. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. A stupid person is someone who has the facts, who has the proper information, and still goes on to make the wrong decision. The hat is in the air. Wear it if it fits. Take care and good night.